The door to my little Bozeman office hit the wall with a bang that echoed off the cheap paneling, and there he was. Cody was in my chair, hunched over my keyboard, the sickly blue glow of my monitor painting his guilty face. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from the run up the stairs, but from the pure, cold satisfaction of seeing it finally happen. On the screen, clear as day, was the open file. Montana Leads 2024.xlsx. His hand froze, his finger a pale spider hovering right over the send button on an email draft. I could see the recipient field was filled with some generic, shady-looking address. All my hard work, all those months of careful, fake data entry, every single lead in that spreadsheet was a fabricated person with a trap phone number belonging to Arthur or one of my other buddies. It was a digital bear trap, and Cody's foot was finally, beautifully caught in it. He didn't jump. He didn't try to close the window. He just sat there, paralyzed, his eyes wide as they flicked from the screen to me, filling the doorway. The air in the room went still and tight, like the moment before a thunderclap. I let the silence stretch. I watched the panic set in, the calculations flashing behind his eyes, the lies, the excuses, all of them useless now. I took a slow, deliberate step inside, my boots quiet on the thin carpet. I wasn't even breathing hard. I looked from his terrified face back to the spreadsheet on my screen, my property on my computer in my office, all the late nights, the suspicion, the quiet conversations with Arthur confirming my hunch. It all crystallized into this single perfect moment. I met his stare, and I said it calm and low, the words feeling solid and true in my mouth. "I've been waiting for this." It wasn't a shout. It was a statement, a verdict. The 3 years of him skimming commissions, undermining clients, that constant, slick smile that never reached his eyes, it all led here to this cracked vinyl chair and a stolen database full of nothing but ghosts and friends waiting for his call. The mouse hadn't moved. The send button was still just one desperate click away. But we both knew it was over. The trap had sprung. Wyatt's voiceover begins with a slight Montana twang over a shot of my home office overlooking the Bitterroot Valley. "You know, out here, you learn to trust your gut. The land teaches you that. 3 months back, mine was telling me something was off. But I ignored it. I was too busy being impressed." The scene shifts to a flashback. The office is sun-drenched. I'm at my desk, and a younger, eager Cody sits across from me, taking notes. See, I'd just hired Cody. Kid was sharp as a tack, fresh out of school, but with a hustle I admired. He wanted to learn the real Montana way of business, not the textbook stuff. I saw a bit of my younger self in him, so I took him under my wing. My ally, Arthur, thought I was being soft. "Wyatt," he'd say, "you're showing a fox the henhouse." I'd just laugh it off. Flashback continues. I'm showing Cody a map of the region on my wall. I started showing him the ropes, the local lumber mills, the ranches looking to diversify, the new tech startups in Bozeman needing a foothold. I showed him how we build trust here. It's handshakes and looking a man in the eye. It's remembering his kid's name. But then Cody started asking questions. Not the good, curious kind. They were precise, surgical. Close up on Cody's intense, focused expression as he speaks. "Wyatt," he'd ask, "exactly how do you source those initial client leads? Is it a purchased list? A proprietary method?" He'd lean in. "And the contact info you gather. How is it stored? Is it encrypted? What's the file naming convention?" I'd chuckle, trying to keep it light. Whoa there, partner. The how isn't as important as the who. We focus on the people. But he'd circle back. Every conversation. He wasn't interested in the relationships, the community. He was reverse engineering a system. My system. Arthur noticed it too. He'd give me that look, a raised eyebrow over his coffee mug that said, "I told you so." I'm shown working late, a single lamp on. On my screen is a file, Montana, leads 2024.xlsx. The final straw was when he asked about our digital vault. I'd mentioned our secure client database in passing. His eyes lit up. A single file? What's it called? Is it cloud-based? That night, I created a new version of that file. I called it Montana Leads 2024.xlsx. But instead of real client data, I filled it with fake companies and trap phone numbers, numbers that would ring straight to me and Arthur. A little test, just in case my gut was right. I saved the file and leaned back, looking tired and wary. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was just being careful with my life's work. But deep down, I knew. I was no longer mentoring a protégé. I was feeding a shark, and he was methodically mapping the contours of the cage. The air in my office felt different today, thicker. I couldn't place it at first, just a low-grade hum of wrongness in the back of my skull as I sat down at my desk. Then I saw it. The stack of project folders for the Montana campaign was off by a quarter inch. I'm a creature of habit. I lined them up flush with the edge of the blotter. Every morning, without fail. My eyes darted to my computer monitor. The login screen was dark. I always log out. I have a password manager, biometrics, the whole paranoid suite. I tapped the spacebar, and the screen flickered to life, already on my desktop. No password prompt. A cold trickle, like a single drop of ice water, traced a path down my spine. Someone had been here. Someone who knew I'd be in late for the quarterly review meeting. My first stupid instinct was to call building security. My hand was on the phone when I stopped. What would I say? My files are neat, but not my kind of neat? It sounded insane. I needed a sane person. I needed Arthur. I met him at the old diner 2 blocks over, the one with the coffee that tastes like burnt motor oil. He listened, stirring his cup slowly, his engineer's mind processing. "Motion-activated camera," he said finally, his voice low. "Small one. We hide it in the bookshelf, aim it at your desk, catch them in the act." It was the logical play, but the thought of some hidden lens, of watching the footage back, filled me with a sick dread. I didn't just want to catch someone. I wanted to know. I needed proof that wasn't just a grainy video of a shadow in my chair. "No," I said, the idea forming as I spoke. "A camera tells us who. I want to know why. I want to hand them exactly what they're looking for and watch what they do with it." Arthur's eyebrows went up. "A trap." "An elegant one." I leaned in. "I've got the encrypted client database for the Montana Leads. Montana Leads 2024.xlsx. What if I left it accessible? But not the real one. I'll create a duplicate. Populate it with fake contacts, dummy emails. And for the phone numbers, a grim smile touched my lips. I'll use trap numbers, numbers that ring to me, to you, to a couple other friends from college. If someone takes that file and starts calling, we'll know." Arthur was silent for a long moment. Then a slow grin spread across his face. It was the grin he used to get right before we'd pull off some complicated prank in our dorm. "So, we don't just catch the rat. We get it to ring a dinner bell." He nodded. "Do it. Make it look good." Back in my office, the unease was gone, replaced by a sharp, focused energy. The intruder had left traces. Now, I would leave a trail of my own. I opened my laptop, the genuine Montana Leads file safe in its encrypted vault, and began to build my beautiful, poisonous replica. All right, so there I was, Wyatt, sitting in my home office at 2 a.m., the blue light of my monitor the only thing cutting through the dark. Cody thought he was so clever that he could just threaten me for my client list. Well, I had a different idea. I opened a blank spreadsheet and named it exactly what he'd be looking for. Montana Leads 2024.xlsx. Just seeing the file name gave me a cold, focused feeling. This wasn't about hiding anymore. This was about setting a trap. My real database? That was safely encrypted and buried in a cloud vault Cody would never find. This new file was going to be his prize. I started building the illusion. I created columns for everything a greedy person like Cody would drool over. Company name, contact, phone number, estimated net worth, investment interest. Then came the fun part. Instead of real clients, I populated it with ghosts. I invented the biggest, most tempting prospects I could think of. Big Sky Mining Consortium, Glacier Peak Venture Partners, Elkhorn Ranch Holdings. I made the net worths obscene, numbers in the tens of millions. But the most important column was the phone number. Every single one of those high-value contacts needed a line to call, and I knew exactly who would answer. I typed in Arthur's cell number first, listing him as J.D. Prescott, CEO of Prescott Land and Cattle. Arthur was my oldest friend, and he'd already agreed to play along. He has this deep, booming voice that sounds like he chews gravel for breakfast, perfect for a fictional Montana tycoon. One by one, I filled in the other numbers. My buddy Ben, who's a mechanic, became B. Hollis, Hollis Heavy Machinery. My cousin Sarah, a teacher, was now S. Reed, Reed Family Minerals Trust. I had a list of 6 trusted friends, all prepped and ready. Their mission? If any unknown number called claiming to be from a big investment firm, they were to play along, sound eager, then get cagey, and hang up. String Cody along into a dead end of confusion and wasted effort. I saved the file to my desktop right out in the open. It looked legitimate, weighty, with false promise. This decoy was more than a file. It was a story I was writing for Cody to believe, a narrative of wealth that would lead him straight into a wall. The real treasure wasn't in the data. It was in the deception. And the bait was set. All right, so here's the moment I'd been waiting for. The trap was set, and all I had to do was step away and watch it spring. I'd spent the morning making a big show of being stressed about the Montana Leads 2024.xlsx file. I muttered to myself about encryption, sighed heavily, and finally, just before noon, I saved it to a folder on my desktop literally named Important for Review. I didn't even hide it. I wanted this to be easy for him. Then, I announced to the mostly empty office, "I'm grabbing a long lunch. Brain needs a reset." I made sure to say it loud enough for Cody, who was pretending to be engrossed in his own screen, to hear. As soon as I was around the corner, I pulled out my phone and opened the security app. We have a small, discreet camera in the corner of the office, mostly for after-hours security. Right now, it was for my sanity. I ducked into a coffee shop across the street, ordered a drink I didn't really want, and watched. For about 5 minutes, nothing. Cody stayed at his desk. Then he stood up, stretched, and casually walked over to my workstation. He didn't even look around first. The arrogance was breathtaking. He sat down in my chair, and my screen, visible through the camera's wide angle, lit up. He was in. I watched his shoulders tense as he navigated to the obvious folder. He double-clicked the file. The password prompt popped up. I could almost hear his frustrated grunt from here. He tried a few things, probably my birthday, the company name, basic stuff. Each attempt failed. He leaned closer, his fingers flying over the keyboard now, more urgent. He was trying brute force guesses, his posture rigid with concentration. A part of me, the old part that trusted him, felt a sharp pang of betrayal seeing it live. But the larger part, the part that had been scheming with Arthur, felt a cold, steady satisfaction. He'd taken the bait. He was so focused on cracking that file, on stealing what he thought was a goldmine of client leads. He had no idea that every trap phone number in that spreadsheet was one of my friends waiting for his call. He was meticulously trying to rob me, and in doing so, he was handing me everything I needed. I took a sip of my coffee, the bitterness tasting like justice. The hunt was on, but for the first time, I wasn't the prey. I was the one watching from the tall grass. Cody was so busy trying to pick the lock, he didn't realize he was already in the cage. My phone buzzed on the desk, the screen lighting up with Arthur's name. A cold, focused calm settled over me. This was it. "Talk to me, Arthur." "Your boy just called me." Arthur's voice was tight, a mix of anger and grim satisfaction. "Pretending to be from Billings Capital Group, asking if I was still interested in portfolio diversification. Used the exact phrasing from your dummy proposal." I didn't say a word. Swiveling in my chair, I pulled up the remote desktop connection on my secondary monitor. A window flashed to life, showing the live activity feed from the decoy virtual machine. For weeks, that machine had held one thing: the file named Montana Leads 2024.xlsx. It was beautiful in its simplicity. A spreadsheet, encrypted, labeled to look like the crown jewels of a rival firm. Inside, 200 rows of completely fabricated contacts, companies, and financial data. And every single phone number in the direct line column belonged to me, Arthur, or a few other very patient, very pissed-off friends. My eyes scanned the log. There it was, a system flag. File decryption successful, 1432. Below it, a log entry that made my lips pull into a thin, hard smile. Outbound call initiated to Arthur Vance, 1433. Cody had taken the bait. He'd cracked the encryption I'd made just weak enough to be tempting, and he'd immediately started dialing. He was in the trap, calling the very people who'd been waiting for him. He wasn't stealing leads, he was announcing his theft to his victims. "He took it," I said, my voice quiet in the dim light of my office. "He's calling from the list right now." On the monitor, I watched as another call log entry populated. He was working his way down the spreadsheet, thinking he was mining gold. He had no idea every number was a landmine. Arthur let out a short, humorless laugh on the other end of the line. "So, what's the play? Do I keep him on the hook?" "Yeah," I said, my gaze fixed on the scrolling log. Cody's digital fingerprints were everywhere now. "String him along. Be interested. Get a callback number. Let him think he's closing a deal." I could almost see him, probably in that rented office he thought was so slick, leaning back in his chair, thinking he'd finally outsmarted me. The trigger had been pulled. The trap wasn't just sprung, It had snapped shut around him. Every call he made was another thread in the net. He was so busy looking at the fake prize, he didn't see the walls closing in. The hunt was over. Now, it was just a matter of reeling him in. All right, so here's how it went down. I was sitting in my truck, parked across from the library downtown, my phone buzzing non-stop on the passenger seat. This was it. The plan was simple, but it had to be perfectly timed. On my screen was a group chat I'd named Operation Montana. It was me, my buddy Arthur, and a handful of other friends whose names I'd planted in that fake database file, Montana Leads 2024.xlsx. Cody thought he'd stolen a goldmine of investor contacts. What he actually had was a list of my closest friends, all waiting with trap phone numbers and a story to tell. He just texted me. Arthur's voice came through my car speaker, calm and steady. Wants to meet at the coffee shop on Main in 20. Says he's excited to discuss the opportunity. I grinned, tapping the record button on my old digital recorder. Perfect. Stick to the script. You're a bored real estate lawyer looking to diversify. Keep him talking. That was the first lure. Over the next hour, my phone lit up with confirmations. My friend Sarah, who Cody knew as S. Bennett Venture Capitalist, had him driving out to the Gallatin Valley Mall for a quick lunch meeting. Jake, our J. Miller tech angel, set a meet at a co-working space near the university. We had Cody running all over Bozeman, chasing ghosts. Every location was carefully chosen, public but not too crowded, places where I could observe. My role was to be the grand finale. While Cody was sweating through his third fake meeting of the day, I was getting everything ready. I had copies of the server log showing his unauthorized access. I had the original encrypted file. And I had this recorder set to capture every word. The final text came from Arthur. He's getting frustrated. Mentioned the numbers seem off. I played dumb. He's heading back to his car near the parking garage on Rouse. He's all yours. I started the truck. This was the moment. He thought he was playing us, but the entire town had just become a stage for his humiliation. Every friend who answered his call, every fake appointment, was a thread in the net we were weaving. And now, I was going to drop it right on his head. I pulled into the parking structure, my heart pounding not from fear, but from a cold, focused certainty. I saw his car. He was sitting in the driver's seat, probably staring at his phone, confused by the dead ends. I took a deep breath, checked the recorder, and stepped out. It was time to have a real discussion about his investment, the investment of time and effort he'd put into stealing from me. I had all the evidence right here in my pocket. The game he started was over. Now, he had to face the player. The office was too quiet, the kind of quiet that hums with something wrong. I pushed the door open and there he was. Cody, hunched over his laptop, a silver flash drive glowing in the USB port. He jumped like he'd been shocked, his hands flying up from the keyboard. "Wyatt, I didn't think you were coming in today." I leaned against the doorframe, keeping my voice casual, almost friendly. "Hey, Cody, how were the contacts?" He blinked. "The contacts?" "Yeah. From the Montana Leads 2024 file. The client database you exported. You must have been calling them all weekend trying to poach them for your new gig. How'd it go?" His face, usually so smug, drained of color. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry cough. "What? No, man, I was just backing up some old project files. Standard procedure before I leave. His eyes flicked to the laptop screen, where a progress bar was slowly filling as it copied data to the drive. Backing up, I repeated, nodding slowly. I pulled my phone from my pocket. See, that's funny, because I've got a different backup right here. I tapped the screen. A backup of your calls. His stammering stopped. He just stared. You remember Arthur, right? My friend? I didn't wait for an answer. I hit play. My own voice, filtered and disguised from a voice-changing app Arthur and I used, filled the quiet room. This is Mike from Sundown Logistics, returning your call about our shipping contract. Cody's jaw tightened. I switched to the next recording. Another one of my buddies playing a different role. Hi, this is Sarah with Clearwater Tech. You reached out about our software demo. Each recording was a nail. Cody's calls, his eager, slimy pitches to steal what he thought were valuable clients, played back to him in a brutal symphony of his own greed. I stopped the playback. The silence that followed was heavier than before. The Montana Leads 2024.xlsx file, I said, my casual tone gone. Every name, every trap phone number on that list. They're all friends of mine. Arthur coordinated the whole thing. You weren't stealing a client list, Cody. You were making a fool of yourself, calling my friends and begging for business that never existed. Every call you made proved what you were trying to do. He looked from me to the flash drive, the progress bar now complete. He'd just finished packing the only thing he'd truly stolen today, the evidence of his own betrayal, wrapped in a package of complete fiction. He didn't say a word. He had nothing left to sell, and no one left to lie to. The air in my office was so thick with tension you could have cut it with a knife. Cody stood there, a smug, triumphant grin plastered on his face, his hand still hovering over my laptop keyboard. He thought he'd won. He thought the file he'd just copied, Montana Leads 2024.xlsx, was his golden ticket to ruining me. It's over, Wyatt, he said, his voice dripping with a malice I'd never fully understood until now. Every fake lead, every trap phone number your little friend set up, it's all mine. I'll expose you as a fraud to every real estate board from here to Billings. I let out a slow breath, the fear that had been a cold knot in my stomach finally beginning to uncoil. Arthur's frantic call had given me just enough time. Time to think. Time to act. Cody, I said, my voice calm, almost pitying. I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket, not for a weapon but for a simple silver USB drive. I held it up, letting the light from the window glint off its surface. You see this? This is the real client database, the one with the actual contacts, the genuine leads, the legacy of trust I've built here. His grin faltered just for a second. You're bluffing. I never stored it on any network, Cody. Never on this computer. I gestured to the laptop he'd just violated. After Arthur warned me about your snooping last month, I went old school. This drive and a safety deposit box. That file you just stole? I couldn't help a small, weary smile. That's the honeypot. Every number in there rings to a friend of mine who's been waiting for your call. They've been recording everything, gathering evidence of your attempt to steal and defame. The color drained from his face. The arrogant confidence shattered, replaced by a dawning, horrified comprehension. He took a stumbling step back from my desk just as the front door of my office opened. 2 uniformed officers walked in, followed by Sheriff Miller himself, his hat in his hands, his expression stern and professional. I had made that call the moment Arthur's warning had sent my heart into my throat. "Cody Fletcher," the sheriff said, his voice filling the room with an undeniable finality. "We need you to come with us. We've received a complaint regarding attempted data theft, fraud, and conspiracy to damage a business reputation. We'll be needing that laptop as evidence." Cody looked from the sheriff to me, his mouth opening and closing without a sound. The villain, undone not by a fistfight or a dramatic chase, but by his own greed and a simple, careful backup plan. The deputies stepped forward, and as they led him out, he didn't look back. The door clicked shut, and the silence that followed was peaceful, profound. I looked out the window at the Montana sky, vast and clear. Cody's reign of petty jealousy and underhanded schemes was over. His reputation in our business community was finished. The real database was safe in my hand, and the only thing that had been exposed was his own true character. It was a quiet victory, but a complete one. I finally felt like I could breathe again. The late afternoon sun slants through the blinds of my Bozeman office, painting warm stripes across the empty desk. It's quiet now, the kind of quiet that feels earned. A month has passed, and the only file on this computer is a spreadsheet for my fly fishing guide bookings. The real client list, the valuable one, isn't here. It's safe, encrypted, and stored somewhere Cody will never think to look. There's a familiar knock on the doorframe. Arthur stands there, holding 2 steaming mugs. "Figured you could use a real cup of coffee," he says, that easy grin of his in place. He doesn't need to say more. We've talked the whole thing to death already. How Cody took the bait, the Montana Leads 2024.xlsx file with all its fake contacts and trap phone numbers that rang straight to my friends. How he vanished the next day, probably still trying to sell leads that don't exist. "You're a lifesaver," I tell him, taking the mug. The rich, bitter smell is a world away from the tension that used to live in this room. We move to the window that looks out over the back valley. Leaning against the sill, we watch in comfortable silence as the sun begins its descent behind the ragged teeth of the Bridger Range. The sky is doing that thing Montana does best, bleeding from deep blue into washes of orange and purple, the clouds catching fire at the edges. Arthur takes a slow sip. "It's peaceful now." "It is," I agree. And it's more than just the quiet. It's the absence of that constant, low hum of suspicion. The feeling that I had to watch every word, every file, every glance. Cody taught me that, even if that wasn't his intention. As the last brilliant sliver of sun dips behind the highest peak, casting the valleys into long, cool shadows, my own thought from a month ago circles back, finally making complete sense. Trust is earned in these valleys, slowly, over years, like the rivers carving through the stone. But so are lessons. Mine was a simple one, written not in code, but in the consequences of a stolen file. Always plant better traps than you grow suspicions. Because the suspicion eats at you, but a good trap, it just ends the game. Arthur clinks his mug gently against mine. No toast is needed. The sunset says it all. We just watch as the day ends, cleanly and without any loose ends, over the mountains that saw the whole thing.